Going into the 2024 college football season, the USC Trojans are going to see a lot of changes. Not only did they lose their number 1 overall pick in Caleb Williams, but they will now be playing against Big Ten schools. No longer will they be playing teams from the West Coast, and things are going to be a little bit different for USC this year. Expectations are pretty high for Lincoln Riley, as so far the head coaching move hasn't really paid off. Trojans haven't gotten to the playoff, and last year was pretty disappointing. Going into 2024 though, many are wondering how USC is going to do. They're going to have a new quarterback in Miller Moss, they're going to have a new set of wide receivers, and hopefully, with some personnel changes, they should be able to break through and maybe make it to the playoff. In today's video, I'm going to preview the 2024 Trojans, go through the roster, the storylines, talk about last year, and how I ultimately think they are going to do. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you want to support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's get started and preview the 2024 USC Trojans. So going into last year, USC returned Caleb Williams, who many expected to be a superstar. He still was pretty good, but was also very underwhelming. They brought in 2 transfers in Marshawn Lloyd and Austin Jones at running back, grabbed one of the top receivers in the country in Dorian Singer from Arizona, and then returned guys like Taj Washington, Brendan Rice, and Mario Williams. They also had a superstar freshman in Zachariah Branch, plus a guy by the name of Deuce Robinson, who some were excited for. Going into the 2023 season, USC was expected to make a playoff run, and things started out good. They ended up beating San Jose State in week 0, 56-28, and Zachariah Branch showed to the world how good he was. Their second game would come against Nevada, and they'd win that game 66-14. The offense was once again on full display against Stanford, as they then won 56-10. In week 4, they'd then play against Arizona State on the road, and that game was a little bit closer than the experts predicted. USC only won by 2 touchdowns, and Arizona State was by no means a good team. After that, they go on the road to play against Colorado, and this was honestly one of the games of September to me. After being up by a lot, Colorado actually made an incredible comeback and made it close, but USC pulled through with a 48-41 victory and got to 5-0. After that, they would return home to play against Arizona, who at the time was just 3-3. There was no reason to expect the Wildcats to be good, but Noah Fafita in his second career start almost took down the Trojans. The game ended up going to 3 overtimes, but luckily USC pulled through and won 43-41. Arizona ended up being really good, but from there, USC would hit hard times. Their luck would run out against the Irish, as going on the road to play against number 21 Notre Dame, they get blown out 48-20, and Caleb Williams was exposed. Many people thought he was a fraud, and then after that, it didn't get any better, as they then lost by 2 points to number 14 Utah. USC's playoff hopes were now done, and midway through October, they were left scrambling. After that, they'd almost lose to Cal, as they'd only beat the Bears on the road by 1 point, and then they'd lose their next 3 games. They lost to Washington 52-42, lost by 9 points to number 6 Oregon, and then dropped the game at home to UCLA by 2 scores. Honestly, I can excuse the Washington and Oregon losses because both of those teams were elite, but the UCLA one was unacceptable. USC had lost 5 of their last 6 games, and very well could have lost 8 in a row. The Colorado, Arizona, and Cal games could have easily been losses, and what's interesting is right when Caleb Williams was done, USC actually performed better. Against number 15 Louisville in the Holiday Bowl, Miller Moss would put up 6 touchdowns, and they would win 42-28. Honestly, I always thought Louisville was pretty overrated, but what was weird was UCLA kind of reset and got better. In total, Caleb Williams still had a good year, as he threw for 3,600 yards with 30 touchdowns and 5 picks. Miller Moss came off the bench and threw 7 scores, and then in the running game, Marshawn Lloyd led the way, as he ran for 820 yards and 9 touchdowns. Austin Jones also had 7 more scores, and Caleb Williams had 11. At the receiver spot, Taj Washington led the way with 59 catches for 1,000 yards and 8 scores, and he ended up going to the NFL. Brendan Rice ended up catching 45 passes for 791 yards and a team-high 12 scores, and then both Deuce Robinson and Zachariah Branch had a little bit over 300 yards and 2 touchdowns apiece. Mario Williams and Dorian Singer were both pretty disappointing, and then both Kyron Hudson and Michael Jackson III also caught a decent amount of passes. True freshman Makai Lemon had a couple of moments, and he should be expected to have a bigger year in 2024. In terms of the defense, linebacker Mason Cobb led the way with 85 tackles. Defensive end Jamil Muhammad led the way with 6.5 sacks. Corner Christian Roland Wallace led the way with 9 pass deflections. And then both him and Kalen Bullock had 2 interceptions apiece. In terms of the 2024 NFL Draft, USC would send 7 players off to the NFL. Caleb Williams went with the first overall pick to the Bears, Kalen Bullock went in the 3rd round to the Texans, running back Marshawn Lloyd went in the 3rd round to the Packers, offensive guard Jarrett Kingston went in the 6th round to the 49ers, and then they had 3 7th round picks in Brendan Rice, Taj Washington, and Solomon Byrd. That was a pretty solid send-off for USC, and how do they plan to replace these guys? Well, in terms of their recruiting class, it would rank number 20 in the country, as it was headlined by Jason Zandamela, an interior offensive lineman, 4-star edge rusher Cameron Fountain, and then 4-star receiver Xavier Jordan. In terms of the transfer portal haul, USC was kind of underwhelming as it finished at number 19 in the country, but they still got a decent amount of good weapons, as they got 3-star receiver from San Jose State Charles Ross, Gavin Meyer, a defensive lineman from Wyoming, Kyle Ford, a former big-time recruit from UCLA, quarterback Jaden Mayava from UNLV, and then a couple of 4-star transfers in Kamari Ramsey, a safety from UCLA, Woody Marks, a running back from Mississippi State, and then Easton Arnold from Oregon State, and Nate Clifton from Vanderbilt. Obviously there's a couple more guys that I missed, but in total the transfer portal haul looks decent. They brought in a couple of wide receivers that should hopefully be able to make some plays, and then filled some gaps on offense and defense. But what does their roster look like now? So in terms of the depth chart, at quarterback you're going to bring back Miller Moss, who had 6 touchdowns in their Holiday Bowl game, and is receiving a ton of preseason hype. He was obviously a blue chip recruit at one point, but while he is really talented, he still is unproven. But I think Miller Moss is going to start out pretty slow and then eventually take over by the end of the year. Behind him, you'll have Jaden Mayava, who is apparently still fighting for that starting job, but more than likely is going to be the backup. After that, you have Jake Jensen, and I'm not really sure why they didn't bring in a blue chip recruit this year, but the quarterback position does seem okay. At the running back position, you're going to have 4 guys battling for playing time, but Woody Marks will be the starter, as he has more than 3,000 yards in his 4 years from Mississippi State, and is by far the most experienced. You have Quentin Joyner, Amarion Peterson, and Brian Jackson as well, and I kind of wish they still had Raleek Brown. At receiver, there's a ton of players to watch out for here. The starters are going to be Zachariah Branch, Jacoby Lane, Makai Lemon, Kyron Hudson, and Deuce Robinson. A lot of these guys were extremely highly recruited, and Zachariah Branch should become a bona fide superstar this year. He has out of this world potential, and now that he'll be the feature guy, I think he's going to explode. I've also always been really excited to see what Makai Lemon can do, and the other guys are also proven. They also have a couple of those transfers who could surprise, like Jay Fair, Kyle Ford, and Jaden Richardson, and then Xavier Jordan's also someone I'm excited to watch. Overall, I really like their receiver core, and I don't think the skill players are going to be a problem for them. At tight end, you're going to have Lake McCree, and then like 6 other guys fighting for playing time. The only issue with McCree is that he is battling an injury, but luckily they'll have an offensive line that seems to be in a decent spot. The starters should be Elijah Page, Emmanuel Pregnon, Jonah Monheim, Alani Noah, and Mason Murphy. On the defensive side of the ball, things do look pretty good, but the defensive line is going to be a little bit of an issue. The starters on the defensive line should be Anthony Lucas, Nate Clifton, Bear Alexander, and Jameel Muhammad, and Lincoln Riley has admitted he needs help there. They didn't do that much to address the need, but hopefully someone will step up. At linebacker, you're going to bring back Easton Mascarenas Arnold, who was a first-team All-Pac-12 player last year, and then after that, guys like Mason Cobb, Eric Gentry, and Ray's John Davis should also get an opportunity to compete and play. I'm also excited to see what Desmond Stevens II or Elijah Newby could do, and then at the nickel spot, the starter should be Jalen Smith, but Greedy Vance Jr. and Prophet Brown will also push him. At safety, the starters should be Kamari Ramsey and Akili Arnold, but guys such as Zion Branch, Anthony Beavers Jr., and Bryson Shaw will also be battling for playing time. Finally, at the corner position, you're going to have Jacoby Covington, John Humphrey, and DeCarlos Nicholson, with Marcellus Williams and Maliki Crawford also voting for playing time. Again, I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on the USC defense, but it looks like things are probably alright besides the defensive line, and they will need to improve because defense has not exactly been their strongest over the last few years, and the Big Ten is a little bit of a different animal. Speaking of a different animal, how are they going to do this year? Well, in week 1, they play in one of the most high-profile matchups against LSU. What's really interesting is it's going to be 2 quarterbacks who both perform well in their bowl games. Garrett Nussmeier looked really good in their bowl game against Wisconsin, and Moss looked great against Louisville. It'll be a battle of these 2 teams, and honestly, USC fans are going to hate me, but I think LSU wins this game by 2 scores. I know LSU is very unproven, but I just think that's how it's going to go. In week 2, they're going to play against Utah State, and they're in an interesting spot with their coaching situation, so they should probably blow them out easily. After that, they have a really difficult game as they're going to go on the road to play against Michigan. While Michigan has to replace their top receiver, top running back, and top quarterback, and has a new head coach, the Wolverines I don't think are going to drop off that much, and playing in the Big House is going to be a difficult challenge for Miller Moss. Unfortunately, I think they're going to end up getting exposed, and this will be USC's second loss of the year. It's not exactly a great start for USC, but after that, I think they're going to come home and get their first big victory against Wisconsin. Obviously, the Badgers have a decent amount of hype this year too, but there's no way USC starts out 1-3, and I think they're going to beat Wisconsin pretty easily, and then they're also going to go on the road and dominate Minnesota and get themselves back to a 3-2 record. After that, they're going to play against Penn State, and while this could be an intriguing upset pick, I think Penn State's going to be able to get them, and they're going to lose a close one at home. So at this point, USC is 3-3, and you're probably all mad at me. But as I said earlier in the video, I think Miller Moss figures it out as the schedule gets a little bit easier, and USC actually could get really hot at the end of the year. First, they play on the road against Maryland, who right now doesn't have a quarterback and lost a lot of their talent, so I think USC wins that game pretty easily. They then have Rutgers, who I'm not exactly that excited for, or I don't think is a juggernaut, and after those 2 wins, they have a somewhat tricky game on the road against Washington. If this was last year, I would probably pick USC to lose, but Washington lost pretty much everything. They lost their top 3 receivers, lost their Heisman level quarterback, their top 2 running backs, their best tight ends, and half their defense. Plus, I forgot to mention they lost their head coach. Washington is not going to be the same team, and despite how good of a coach Jedd Fisch is, Washington is not going to be that competitive in 2024, and USC will get their 3rd straight win. After that, they're going to come home and play against Nebraska, and while this could be an intriguing game, especially if Dylan Raiola plays better than advertised, I think USC will beat them pretty handily, and that'll get them to their 4th straight win. After that, they're going to go on the road to play against UCLA, and UCLA is in a first-year head coaching situation as well. I don't have a ton of faith in Ethan Garbers, and they lost a lot of their key players. And then add in the fact that they're embarrassed by what happened last year, USC wins that, and that gets them to 5 straight. To end the season, they're going to play against Notre Dame, and this is an intriguing matchup. Notre Dame will have a new quarterback in Riley Leonard, and the Irish are guaranteed to win anywhere between 9 and 11 games, so this game will be competitive and it is a rivalry. I still don't have that much faith in Notre Dame though, and with it being at home and how last year's game went, I think USC is going to win by at least a touchdown. That'll get USC to a 9-3 record. After a 3-3 start, I think they're going to win 6 straight games, and while it won't be enough to get them into the playoff, they'll still play in a decent bowl, and more importantly, they'll have a ton of momentum going into 2025, in which we'll have a Miller Moss-Zachariah Branch duo. If I had to put money on it, I think Miller Moss gets a lot better towards the end of the year, Zachariah Branch becomes a superstar, and Woody Marks becomes one of the top backs in the Big Ten. The defense will have to sort some things out, but to me, the 5 most important games on the schedule are going to be the LSU, Michigan, Penn State, and Notre Dame game. I think USC will go 1-3 in that stretch, but there is a chance that they could go 2-2. The most likely scenario is that they beat LSU, as I really don't think they're going to beat Penn State or Michigan, but for now, I have USC going at 9-3. Maybe some of you guys will disagree with me, but playing 3 potential top 10 teams in your first 6 games is going to be tough when you're breaking in a ton of new players and a new defense. We'll have to wait and see though, but what do you guys think? If you're a USC fan, what did they get right and wrong? How do you think the Trojans will do in 2023? And what program should I cover next? Be sure to let me know down below, leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out all my other videos on the end screen. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.